God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. After college, I spent about 4 years, some of you know this, working in a short-term missions and education organization. And for me, it was the perfect job. About 6 months out of the year, I would work out of an office, usually in Dallas, and then the other 6 months, I would close my apartment up, take the 9 things that I own, put them in the back of my 1995 4Runner, which is still parked out there, incidentally, and it all fit inside that 4Runner, and I would pack a bag and guide trips around the world for about 6 months. And so for a 22, 23-year-old, it was a good life. I enjoyed it, and for about 4 years, this was perfect. And at the end of my 4th year, I started to get a little restless, and I had accumulated some airline miles, as you might imagine. So I called our flight. What am I trying to say? The person in charge of my flights, whatever that's called, travel agent. That's what we call it for business. And I said, here's the deal. There's a free ticket. I need to go somewhere. I just need to be alone for a while. If there's one to Lima, Peru, send me there. If there's one to Calgary, Canada, send me there. She called back and said, Calgary's open. And so I flew up to Calgary, Canada, and they've got a bus to way, way northern Canada. Northern Rockies. And here's what I was going to do. Here's what I did. I was going to do what I call the wilderness fast. It's pretty much how it sounds. You disappear for a while, you don't take food, you hike around, you take a Bible and a journal in your tent, and you just see what happens. And so I did that, and I learned some important things. One was, don't hike long distances without food. I think that was important. I don't know how I didn't see that coming. Then you learn. The other thing was I got some good quiet time, but I didn't hear any voices from the sky or anything like that. By the time I got out of the woods to civilization where my cell phone worked again, I had these messages waiting from work, this job that I loved. And every message about work, I don't know how to say, just hurt my ears. I just thought, I can't do this another year. And it was time for me to sign my annual contract. So by the time I got back to Dallas, I got back to my boss and I said, here's the deal. I've just signed a year-long lease with some friends to rent a house in Dallas. I'm stuck here. I don't have another job. But I think if I sign another year contract, I think you're going to hate me. I'm going to hate you. It's just going to be bad. I think it's time for me to go. And it was sad. I mean, I'd kind of been there since the beginning of the company, and so we prayed, we cried, we say goodbye the whole bit. And I'm walking out of his office, walking toward my office, and my phone rings, and it's this soon-to-be roommate. And he says, Trey, listen, I don't know how to tell you this, but the owner of the house just called, and they actually can't rent the place out this year, so they tore up our contracts, and they've given us our checks back. We don't have a place to live. I said, okay. And I went back to my desk. I wrote an email to a pastor in Nashville, Tennessee. I guided 2 trips for this group, and it was just a church, I don't know how else to say it, they just got it. They were just a good place, and I felt like I had a lot to learn from them. The pastor was an author, and I liked some of his stuff. And I wrote in this email, ready? I said, Dear Mark, I'm homeless and jobless. How was your week? Love Trey. I had an interview, but believe it or not, about 40 minutes later, he wrote back and he said, funniest thing, I just lost a youth director. How about you come to Nashville for an interview? And I think about 2 weeks later, I lived in Nashville and worked for who would later become my father-in-law. It's kind of a cool story. And I knew it was a cool story. When I got to Nashville, you better believe I told this story. It was like my Exodus story. Like by telling this story, I was like, see, God obviously has a hand in my life. And I told it, and I told it, and I told it, until after about 3 years, I realized that I had told that story quite a bit, but I hadn't told a lot of other stories. Matter of fact, it started to become clear that maybe I was running on old stories. That every part of my ministry was sort of backward looking, that I had forgotten, or actually maybe more accurately, that I was afraid to write a new story. Listen to what Carrie just read. Thus says the Lord, who makes a way in the sea, a path in the mighty waters, who brings chariot and horse, army and warrior. They lie down, they cannot rise, they're extinguished, quenched like a wick. In verse 18, do not remember the former things, or consider the things of old. Okay, that first part of the passage sounds familiar, right? Are you with me on this? Like, we could have taken that right out of the Exodus story. I mean, it's straight out of, and everything. And then, out of nowhere, God throws what I don't know what to call, but a holy curveball. After saying, remember all this stuff, and then says, don't think about it. And I've just got to think if we're like the Israelites at all, that's confusing. I don't know what to do with that exactly. Just to make sure we're on the same page, here's an overview of how I imagine this conversation going down. Hey, Israelites? Yeah, God? Remember that time back in Egypt, when I got you out of slavery, and I parted the Red Sea, and I took out Pharaoh's army? God, are you kidding? That's like all we can talk about. Yeah, I know. Quit it. This is a curveball. The fact is, there's something great and right about having these stories of God's faithfulness to lean on and steady ourselves when things have gotten rough. When we're feeling a little bit forgotten, or like every single thing we do ends in failure, our history is that crucial crutch that keeps us on our feet. It only seems like God has a problem when that crutch has turned into more of a couch. When our history doesn't just, steady us for the future, for the present, but it becomes that comfortable thing that we snuggle down into until, well, who wants to get up from a nice warm couch, especially after a rough day, When we've collapsed onto our old stories, we miss verse 19, and this is our Advent theme. This is what Grace is writing about. I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? As Christians, we lean, and rightfully so, on a great tradition, on a rich history. So what we're doing when we learn how to wait well, which is what I think we should do during Advent, we're learning how to honor that history while continuing to live now. Now is that time when God is writing the stories that future generations will look back on when they need help. When Amelia needs a story, we're writing the stories she needs when she's 16. I wonder if we're prepared to wait well. Listen to verses 19 through 21. I'll make a way in the wilderness, rivers in the desert. Wild animals will honor me, jackals and ostriches. I give water in the wilderness, rivers in the desert, to give drink to my chosen people, the people I formed for myself, so that they might declare my praise. Do you hear what's being said here? I have plans for another story, a new journey, and I'm going to take care of you this time just like I did last time. And everybody around you, down to those scrubby desert creatures that you really don't even care about, they'll be the better. Because you're living the story you were designed to live. Christians, Kingston, we are a people on the move. We were made for it. And so even in this Advent season, when we are supposed to be in anticipation, waiting, may we wait on our toes. Because when we wait on our heels, I would argue we're not really waiting at all, we're just kind of getting comfortable. I gotta tell you this, I read an article recently. It's called Sitting is Killing Us. Sitting down is killing us, and it gave all of the reasons that chairs, that's right, the ones you're sitting in, are the enemies. Okay, and I've got to give you some of these stats because it really blew me away. Okay, when you sit down, all electrical activity in your leg muscles shuts off. It's not needed. So like right now, as I'm just standing, they're not even going anywhere, but they have to be engaged because they're balancing me and things like that. When I'm sitting, it shuts off. Calorie burning when we sit down drops to 1 per minute. Enzymes that help break down fat, they drop 90% after 2 hours of sitting. So if any of you, say, have a desk job or drive for long distances or maybe a student, this might apply, good cholesterol drops after 2 hours 20%. Insulin effectiveness drops 24%. What it said was our human bodies were never designed for long-term sitting. Our muscles and tendons, they shorten and tighten in ways that make it difficult to function, so that when we do stand up, we still have trouble moving around. When we're on our feet, it says, as much as, this doesn't count sleeping, but just during the day, when we're on our feet as much as we're in a chair, years are added to our life expectancy. It says when we walk, our brains function significantly better, we're more creative, more focused, our memory So what am I going to do? I have homework. Am I going to die? But luckily, it gave an answer. The end of the article gave an answer on what we can do to prevent this. You ready? Stand up. That's all it says. It says even if you can only do it a few minutes at a time, even if you can't actually go anywhere, your legs will re-engage. Your body wakes up. It's like hitting the reset button. I wonder if we've sat in the comfort of yesterday's faith for a little too long. I wonder if we've forgotten that we are people on the move. I wonder if we remember that we have a living God who's writing living stories today. Because did you notice verse 20? When the Israelites begin to move, those jackals and ostriches are what get blessed. Not just our loved ones, not just us, not just people we care about, people we don't even know or maybe don't even like, the ones we have trouble loving, their lives are better. It's just what happens when we move to be a part of the stories that God is writing today. Like rivers in a desert, the world benefits. So, everyone who is able, I want to try a little something, okay? If you would, stand up. As we begin Advent, I'd just like us to sort of pinky swear something, okay? You don't actually have to grab your neighbor's pinky. You can if you want. But let's do this during Advent. Let's set our watches, set our alarms, draw X's on our hands, put it on your calendar, do whatever you need to do, maybe once a day, maybe once an hour, to remind us to stand up and re-engage. Hopefully, when our alarms go off, we notice the X's on our hands, it'll catch us in an unexpected moment. Hopefully, in that moment, we can remember that it's Advent and that we are anticipating the coming of Christ. And in that moment, let's ask ourselves, what does it mean that God put on skin and walked among us? What does it mean for this moment, right here, with these people, wherever you have to be? What does Christmas mean now? Does this make sense? Because this is our home. This is what we'll try to think about every week through Advent. And I honestly have no idea where it's going to specifically lead any of us. But I'll bet that everyone, you and me, and the people around us, and the people who maybe don't even like, will be the better for it. Because we have begun to live a better story, because we have begun to wait on our toes. The fact is, we have a gift of history, not so that we can dwell on it, but so that we can leap from it. We are not a formerly loved people. We are a loved people. And we are called to love. So in this Advent season, friends, may we wait well. Amen.